The art of war is deceit. First, you must attack your enemy when he least expects it. In a place where he feels strong, but is in fact weak. With an army he feels he has already vanquished. At midnight the battle begins. The battlefield is Gotham City. My adversary is Batman, and I shall be the victor.
This is where it all started.
Let the battle for Gotham City be joined.
They've seized Guard Post 1! Prison break! You ready for the plan? Break! Oh! We've lost control!
Commissioner.
Batman, there's been a riot at Stonegate Prison. Escaping criminals are flooding the city and attacking innocent citizens. I'm just getting this. There's trouble at Arkham Asylum.
What kind of trouble?
I don't know. I can't raise the warden. The tactical squad is on the way. Oh my.
What is it, Commissioner?
No. No. Not the noose.
The noose. The hanged man. Scarecrow. Jim, hold your breath. Get your gas mask. I'm on my way.
You want to go anywhere, Bats? You gotta pay street toll.
Jim.
It's over, Batman. They control the city.
Jim, get control of yourself. Scarecrow.
Quite correct, Batman. Who else would spread so much fear?
Who else would want to?
Amazing what fear does, isn't it? Turns a brave man into a cowering child. Sends hardened policemen scurrying like schoolgirls. And you're beginning to feel the effects of fear, aren't you, Batman? A bead of sweat under the cowl, a tremulous heartbeat, a quickening of the breath. World's looking a little unfamiliar to you now, isn't it? Interesting how precarious our grasp on sanity is. One slight bump, and courage seems to slip away, doesn't it?
No. Never. Not for me.
No! Get away! Leave me alone! No! Help me!
Batman. A bit late, aren't you? Commissioner Gordon is scared out of his mind, I'm afraid.
Afraid? No. You're not afraid. But I'll teach you what fear is.
Maybe this time, the Reaper will come.
No, not this time.
Batman.
Jim, are you all right?
Fine now. It's like I'm waking up from a nightmare.
For some, it's still going on. Take him to Arkham.
We can't. Unknown persons took over Arkham at the time of the escape. I ordered the tactical squad to surround it.
I have the feeling that we're up against an enemy like we've never seen before.
Batman, Clayface has taken over the Gotham Chemical Factory.
Scarecrow, Clayface. They couldn't do this alone. There's someone else behind all this.
You'd better hurry, Batman.
Jim, is there something you're not telling me?
They promised that the best scientific minds in the world would fix my condition. It never happened. I tried to rejoin society, but it rejected me. I tried to beat society, but they parked me in Arkham Asylum. So now I have a new plan. If I can't beat them, I'll have them join me. As we speak, I am formulating enough of the chemical that created me to turn every citizen in Gotham City to clay. Think they might come up with a cure then?
Batman, we just received a tip that a weapon of mass destruction is heading toward Gotham City.
Where'd the tip come from? Jim, where did the tip come from?
I can't say.
Meaning you don't know, or you won't tell?
I just can't say. You stop Clayface. I'll look for the weapon of mass destruction.
Time to end it. One way or the other, Batman.
Too bad you're only half the monster you used to be.
Children, come to me! Still look like an easy fight, Batman?
No, just a good one.
Gloat now, Batman. But by dawn, he will have conquered Gotham City.
Who? Who's behind this? I need to know who's behind this.
I'm sorry, Batman. I've been sworn to silence. National security.
If national security is involved, then we're dealing with a foreign criminal. Given the military precision of his planning, it can only be one man. Sin Tzu, warlord of Asia.
I can neither confirm nor deny it, Batman.
Sin Tzu was captured by Special Ops and, of course, brought to Arkham Asylum for study.
Very good, Batman. You are the worthy opponent I desire. The battle is fully joined, albeit its outcome is a certainty.
First rule of war, Sin Tzu. There are no certainties.
I am pleased to see that you have read my tone.
When you surrender, the war will stop.
Like it did in Siena, when you marched the entire population into re-education camps.
Education is the cure for ignorance.
Or in Oolong, when you forced thousands into slavery.
Idle citizens are the fuel of insurrection.
You were once a great strategist, Sin Tzu. But now you're just a common thug.
Batman, I've located the barge, Dock 47.
I'm on it. I'll disarm your weapon, and when I do, I'm coming for you, Sin Tzu.
If only you knew where to find me. Very good, Batman. Better than I expected, but even you cannot search all of those crates.
Don't bet on it.
There is no chance involved, only certainty. I have provided you a puzzle with no solution.
There is always a solution. One thing Sin Tzu didn't plan on. The Batcave. Or did he?
He's heading to his Batcave. Activate our skirmishers. The one thing he mustn't have is time to collect his thoughts, to realize, to plan.
Skeletons. There it is, shielded in lead. To the doors! Now to disarm the bomb. Bane.
He never said bomb. He said weapon of mass destruction. And that is me. Gonna be a rematch, Batman.
Not tonight, there won't. By the time you wake up, you'll long since have forgotten where the Batcave is.
Batman, you have not disappointed me. Would you like to know our next battleground?
I already do, and I'm coming for you.
Ah, but you have no idea where I am. I could be anywhere in Gotham.
There is little difference between a fortress and a prison. One can be exchanged for another easily.
Ah, my own words. Your scholarship continues to impress.
You're hiding in the last place I would expect, and yet the best fortress in Gotham City. Arkham Asylum.
It's impregnable. It was not only built to keep super criminals in, but to keep their henchmen out.
You make sure nobody gets out. I know a way in.
I was able to persuade the security agency to disclose some of their findings on Sin Tzu.
That was kind of them.
He's mastered something they refer to as yin-yang alchemy, also known as Yan Jin.
It's an ancient metaphysical art. Masters of it are able to turn mental energy into physical energy, to heighten their own abilities and dominate the minds of their underlings.
That must be how he controlled Scarecrow, Bane, and Clayface.
Not much of a trick, since they were all doing what they love best, fighting me.
Be careful, Batman. He might try to use it on you.
It only works on the weak and the impressionable. I am neither.
Impressive trophy collection, is it?
Tonight I'll add one more. What happened to all of them?
Control the mind. The body rapidly follows.
Why did you pick Scarecrow, Clayface, and Bane to lead the attack?
Let us say they were less unpredictable.
But they failed.
It was essential that they did. They were simply a way of luring you here. To me.
So we meet, Sin.
You didn't really expect to find me in my cell, did you? Very good, Batman. Now, come and get me. Thus it ends as all battles should end. Two great commanders facing each other on an empty battlefield.
Let's finish it. You made the worst mistake a general can make.
And what would that be?
You misjudged your enemy. My motives are nothing like yours.
Save a sweet victory now, or there will be another day.
Don't count on it.
They're mopping up now.
Sin Tzu was right. When the commander is defeated, the army surrenders soon after.
I should have told you that Sin Tzu had been transferred to Arkham, but I was sworn to secrecy.
I understand. We all have to honor our vows. To the living and to the dead.
From the moment Bruce Wayne donned the cape and cowl as Batman, the cast of criminals known as the Rogues Gallery has provided the Dark Knight with some of the most legendary confrontations in comics history. In the beginning, there was the Joker, a victim of a chemical waste accident which stretched his face into a hideous grin. He vowed to terrify honest citizens in the same way Batman struck fear into criminals. The Joker became the model for other Batman villains to follow. A seemingly endless parade of tormented, insatiable lunatics who would sacrifice anything to earn a place in Gotham City's underworld. Catwoman, the femme fatale alter ego of a jet-set socialite. She stalks the fortunes of Gotham's idle and corrupt rich. Harley Quinn, a former psychologist who became personally involved with her patient, the Joker, a disturbing mixture of comedy and tragedy. Two-Face, hinging every decision on the flip of a silver dollar. His unpredictability makes him one of Batman's most dangerous enemies. Scarecrow, sadistic, analytical, and precise. This master manipulator will find his target's greatest fear and exploit it mercilessly. The Penguin, shunned by high society for his bird-like appearance, he is the portrait of aristocracy gone mad. Clayface, permanently altered by an experimental chemical force-fed to him by mobsters, once handsome movie star Matt Hagen now revenges himself on the world as a shape-shifting monster. Ra's al Ghul, a centuries-old mystic who found eternal life in the Lazarus pit, only to discover the byproduct of his immortality was insanity. Bane, a deadly South American hitman hired by a gang boss to kill Batman. This masked assassin uses a super steroid called Venom to enhance his already massive physique and power. Poison Ivy, lovelier than a rose, and deadlier than Nightshade. Her unique body chemistry can enslave any man, and her kisses are fatally toxic. The Riddler, a constant frustration to the Caped Crusader. He's a creature of cold intellect and sardonic wit, with a penchant for committing brain-racking crimes. Mr. Freeze, sworn to make Batman suffer for interfering in his plans for revenge, he encases himself in a Sub-Zero power suit and wields a gun capable of freezing its target to death. Killer Croc, a mutant reptile man who worked as a freak show attraction and professional wrestler until he took up the life of a Gotham City crime boss. He embodies cruelty, tenacity, and sheer animal rage. And now, the latest foe to rise against Batman and Gotham City. Sin Tzu, deadly master of the arts of war. But who is this mysterious villain? And from what shadowy den did he emerge?
Our challenge going in was to make a good, a new villain for the Batman universe. And and we realized we needed a very different kind of villain, because Batman, if you look at the rogues gallery for Batman, he doesn't have a big, what I call an ambient villain. An ambient villain would be like Blofeld in the James Bond series, or like the Emperor in Star Wars. One of those guys that controls thousands of minions. Batman doesn't really have one. And we said, no, let's have a guy that's squaring off against Batman and he wants to conquer Gotham City.
Basically, we knew that we wanted somebody to challenge Batman both physically and mentally. We wanted somebody to really stand toe-to-toe with him, to challenge Batman on all fronts. And he had to be brilliant. He had to be physically really strong, powerful, and he really had to pose a really serious threat to Batman.
Yeah, once we knew that the whole character establishment thing is, first you decide what he's going to do, then we decided what his basic personality was. Then I talked to Jim Lee, because that was the right time to bring him in.
I think in games like Batman, where there's an established rogues gallery, you want to entice the players to try, to pick up the game, and I think the idea was to introduce a new character. You need people to create the characters, so they approached Flint Dilley and myself. Flint wrote the game, the script for the video game, and I've worked in comics for almost my entire life, and he and I collaborated and came up with the character Sin Tzu. We just sort of brainstormed, and a lot of times, and the same way in comics, you often start with a name. Like, a name is crucial. A name can give you the powers, it can give you suggestions for visuals, it can give you an immediate, it can write itself. If you have a cool name, you know everything about the character from the start. And so we sort of brainstormed about what this character would be.
And Jim Lee and I got together, And I had all these ideas and notions about the character, but I had no idea what he looked like or anything like that. So we just started talking about the character and what he did and all this, and they said, we want somebody that's like a general but a major strategist, because we want to play on a whole part of Batman's nature that we know is there, but we haven't really ever seen. We thought, well, he'd be like Sun Tzu, but we'll call him Sin Tzu because this is Batman. And we were off and running.
And in this game, this particular villain needed to be more of a strategic villain. He'd be a guy that sort of mastermind this grand plot against Batman. And so when we started talking about those kinds of characters, people like that, I mentioned something about Sun Tzu, The Art of War. It's a well-known book about warfare and how to conduct it. And that sparked the idea of creating a character called Sin Tzu. And immediately we knew the character was Asian. We knew, kind of that he was militaristic, and so that kind of gives you a starting point for a visual. You start thinking about military outfits, uniforms, that kind of thing, and that's what really kind of got it. You need that spark to kind of start the process, and then it makes everything else fall into place.
This guy really thinks of himself as a general, and he really thinks of himself as a conqueror, and everything he says, and we're turning the game script into a novel now. And everything he says in the game script and the novel sort of sounds like Sun Tzu, and it sort of sounds like legitimate, advice in warfare, except it's so twisted and evil that it has a kind of nice edge to it.
Two great commanders facing each other on an empty battlefield.
But I think the idea is that Sin Tzu is a character that's hell-bent on getting revenge on Batman, and he's a character that has masterminded this plot and thought it all through and has really maneuvered Batman into this spot. And it's not just physically, but also psychologically, and I think that is a hallmark of a Batman villain. Sin Tzu went through a lot of different permutations before we got to a final version. We knew because of the name and because of his function in the game that he would be an Asian character that had militaristic, sort of strategic thinking in mind. And when we start thinking about Asian culture, whether it's Japan, China, there are a lot of visual things you can play around with. Tattoos, a very prominent thing within Japan, kind of a long ponytail kind of thing. The fact that the Chinese put a lot of value on gold and gold leaf patterns.
He painted all of his skin gold because he's got to harness this psychic energy, which is what controls all of his powers, and so you can't let it out of the body. It can only come out through his eyes or through his mouth, or and you start figuring things out, and that starts affecting what the guy looks like. And after that, Jim started drawing up ideas, and I wrote character studies, and they kept going back and forth, and then they go over to Ubisoft, who would be talking about what they needed for the purposes of the 3D animation and the characters.
And then the game developers use that as a framework for creating a three-dimensional polygonal virtual character, I guess, and they insert that into the game. And it's kind of a surprise for people that have been following Batman comics, because it's a brand new character, and it allows the game developers to really custom make the game to their vision. They're not necessarily locked into using something that already exists. They can approach a writer, an artist like myself, and say, look, this is kind of what we're looking for. Can you help us out on this, and come up with something that works best in a 3D video game format.
And sure enough, when we got done, we knew, hey, we've got a great character here. So that's how that was Sin Tzu's birth and or his conception and birth.
In the beginning, there was actually no plan to create Sin Tzu, and the Joker was set to be the lead villain in the game. Then the decision was made to use another character because, although the Joker is a fascinating character, we see him so often in games that it was beginning to become routine.
But still, there was something else that we could add to this product to spice it out a little. And when DC came with the idea of creating a new character, it sounded perfect.
A couple weeks later,
we heard that Jim Lee was on board, and this thing was being really backed, and we were really putting the resources needed to make this happen. And we realized that we were onto something big here, something special.
Creating the character was another part, was the second part of this whole project, because it was a project within the project. We're creating this game, we're producing and designing the game, but inside this there was this character that needed to be designed. We started with his visual, with his colors, his shape, and then working out some animation.
The character creation process began once we received concept art from both Jim Lee and DC Comics. While Jim Lee's style was very realistic, the art from DC was closer to the cartoonish style of Bruce Timm, the artist from Batman the Animated Series. At that point, we were able to really get going on the 3D Sin Tzu. Our in-house 2D artist Olivier got to work on creating more character illustrations that we could use as reference. We needed as many of these sketches as possible, since all we had to go on were those two initial sketches from Jim Lee and DC. For all the other characters you see, we had the entire animated series to use as reference. So we had a lot of catching up to do with Sin Tzu. These 2D sketches were critical for us to better understand the Sin Tzu character and capture his essence. My part started after we received the sketches from Jim Lee. It was my job to take those sketches and tweak them so we could have something applicable to the game, something the 3D artists could take into their arena and use to create a working character model. And most of all, I had to come up with a look that would fit naturally with the style we had already established for the other characters in the game. Jim Lee's initial sketches of Sin Tzu had rather complicated facial designs, especially around the eyes. He had these Arabesque style tattoos that were filled with complex circles, loops, spirals, and so on. These were really interesting, but also very complicated to visualize on the 3D model in real time on a monitor. So we decided to synthesize that look into a simpler design using black line work below the eyes. It worked very well, and we were happy with the results. We were able to get something that worked in the 3D world and actually maintain some of the high detail from Jim Lee's original design, which is what we really wanted. Throughout the entire process, we were testing out different elements that the game designers had requested. For example, I was asked to try making the yin-yang symbol on Sin Tzu's forehead spin. At first, I thought this was a joke, but no, they really wanted to try it out. There were also a lot of tests done with his hands. They started off being really claw-like, but as the character evolved, the hands became more human. Then they went back to being more claw-like to help Sin Tzu retain that supernatural feel. Right now, that's what we have, and that's what should make it to the game. So the biggest part of my job was to take Jim Lee's concepts, which were very detailed, lots of shadows, very realistic, with a lot of dramatic lighting, and simplify them as much as possible to resemble the art style of Bruce Timm, the animated series look. But at the same time, the style needed to be transferable and animatable in 3D. So I also had to work with Daniel Bordelot, our 3D artist, in order to be able to integrate that in the game. So it was basically a compromise, a three-way compromise between Jim Lee, Bruce Timm's look, and the 3D requirements. Compared to the other bosses of the game, we had no reference points for Sin Tzu. We knew what the character would look like visually, but we had no idea how he would move or what his personality was. When we considered how to animate Sin Tzu, what we wanted to create was neither realistic nor cartoonish. What we were aiming for was semi-realistic, if you'll allow the expression. We referenced movements from karate, kung fu, and capoeira. to give us the realistic base animations. The animation was created almost exclusively by hand. There was no motion capture involved. Then we amplified those basic movements with a hyper-real stylized look.
He had to appear extremely quick, hard to get a hold of, almost to the point of frustration. And he needed to appear extremely confident, maybe to a fault. And because basically Sin Tzu is in control. He's the master general, and he's going to dictate to Batman how the game will be played, if you will.
One of his main aspects is speed. In the fight against Batman, the final fight, the main thing you have to fight against is speed. He's always moving around. You never get a chance to hit him. You have to find the right opportunity, and that's where we had to add some more special effect, make him move very fast, and make it some kind of motion blur trail behind him. So you can still read the motion of what he's doing because you have a long trail of it, but you still have a feeling of pure speed going on and not knowing where he's going to be next time you're going to try to hit him. One very good signature move he has is there's in one point to express his speed. In one point, Batman can try to grab Sin Tzu, but Sin Tzu is capable of breaking out of this grab and move around all around and go hit him from behind before the player or Batman have even time to react.
One thing that we want to do with Sin Tzu and that he brings to the party is he has a kind of a metaphysical. It's not magical, and it's not like he got bitten by, you know, a radioactive scorpion or something. He's got a metaphysical, studied power. In some ways, not unlike Batman's own powers of concentration and intuition.
I knew that I wanted Sin Tzu to have a special attack. This special move that he would execute once he's being either taken a significant amount of damage from Batman or he's been frustrated by Batman. Maybe Batman has totally like foiled his plans and now he's frustrated and he's going to unleash this big special attack on him as a kind of a fail-safe or a countermeasure. I knew that I wanted to do something like that. The Meta Tzu attack that Sin Tzu has fit perfectly. Basically, when you beat on Sin Tzu enough, he basically rushes to the center of the screen and unleashes this huge wave of energy that's basically calling from within him, the Meta Tzu that he's learned from centuries ago. And this is how we worked it into the game as a kind of his last fail-safe, last resort to take Batman down.
As for Sin Tzu's personality, we wanted him to be someone who was cultivated, elite, and arrogant.
Impressive trophy collection, is it not?
One way we conveyed this in-game was with his body language, standing defiantly in front of the player characters like Batman or Nightwing with his arms crossed, always confident. We made sure to always present Sin Tzu in this way, very intelligent, very calculated, and above all, very dangerous. Every one of Sin Tzu's movements expresses Sin Tzu's strategic mind. When he attacks, he seeks to knock down an adversary in one shot, to not only beat him physically, but mentally as well. Working with Jim Lee was very interesting. It was great to come into work and have new sketches from Jim Lee in your mailbox. Later on, Jim did even more sketches, which was great. Some of them were more cartoonish than his usual style and helped define Sin Tzu's facial expressions. Sin Tzu gained his square jaw look from these later sketches. His eyes were defined. The character matured. Jim used Photoshop to retouch 3D images we sent him to suggest color choices, correct little details, and sometimes add new details. This really helped us to create the character that everyone wanted. Collaborating with Jim Lee was very, very interesting. It was great to work with Jim because I followed his work for a long time, and I really respect what he's done. And when I was a kid, I really loved to read DC Comics, so working with both Jim Lee and DC Comics is kind of like a childhood dream come true, but also a bit intimidating at the same time.
It was it was a little special to work to create this character working with people at DC and Warner. I was a little scared at the beginning that Jim Lee would give us a drawing, we just put that in 3D, and that's it. There's no way to discuss about anything. But we end up receiving many drawings from Jim Lee and asking us what do you prefer, what is good for you, and then we end up cutting little parts, putting them together, and say, okay, we like the head of this guy, and maybe the hands of this guy, and it all was done in a team spirit, and it was very well received, and the result is very nice. So everybody feel like they put a little part of it in it, and it feels very good.
You know, when Jim Lee came on board, that's when you knew this was going to be something special, and it's an incredible opportunity and an incredible achievement on our part too, and DC's as well, to create a new villain specifically for this game that can be exploited thereafter in comics and books and whatnot. And we're contributing to the pantheon of awesome villains that exist today in the Batman mythos. You know, Batman is, I think, one of the most popular and well-known comic heroes, you know, in the last century. So yeah, it's an awesome opportunity. And it's extremely inspiring and exciting for us to be working on that.
I've always been a big fan of Batman ever since I was young, so working on a Batman game was really special for me. It was very interesting working with Jim Lee and helping give life to this character. It was an honor to be a part of the team. I'm really proud of the work we've done, and I'm sure the entire team is really proud of the character we helped create. Again, this is a childhood dream to be able to work on a project like this, especially in a series that's so popular and so mythical. That meant we had to approach this project with the attitude that we couldn't mess it up. We had to do this right, for the sake of the Batman universe.
I think if you're a 10-year-old kid that's into Batman, you've been watching the Batman cartoons, picking up the Batman comic book, it's great because you're seeing a new Batman villain show up in the video game first. He'll probably appear in the comic book, he'll probably appear in other Batman-related things, but he's going to show up in this game first. And I think it's always cool to be there when it happens. You know, I remember when I saw my first, Star Wars movie or picked up my first comic book. I knew exactly, where I was, what characters were in it. And I think if you're into comics, you're into pop culture, it's a first. I mean, there's not a lot of this. Most games that are based on existing properties like Batman are pretty much adaptations of something that already exists. This is the first, or one of the first times where people that are into comics were hired to create something novel, something original for the Batman video game itself. And then that in itself will come back to comic books, and you'll see the Sin Tzu character appear in other versions of Batman, whether it's cartoons or comics or whatever. And I think that's a first, and I think it's exciting. I mean, from my standpoint, it's exciting, and I would think from a fan standpoint, it'd be exciting to catch, to be there for Batman history, I guess.
You made the worst mistake a general can make.
And what would that be?
You misjudged your enemy. My motives are nothing like yours.
Save a sweet victory now, or there will be another day.
Sin Tzu is the latest addition to the rich heritage of unforgettable Batman villains. But will he ever rise again to strike Gotham City? As Batman's endless battle against crime has taught us, the true depth of evil is impossible to predict. So perhaps the question isn't if Sin Tzu will return to battle Batman, but when.